Hi, I'm Dr. Brayman. Great to see you today. Today, I'm going to be talking about 4 tips on how to argue better. Now, you might be saying, what? I don't want to argue. No, give me tips on how to not argue. Fair. But here's the thing. We all argue. We all do it. Some of us hide it. Some of us only do it in private. Some of us might say we don't do it, but we do it. Arguing. It's a natural part of life. No one's ever in agreement all the time, not even with himself. So, first of all, apologies if there's some glare from the lights. Second of all, let's talk about first tip on arguing. Don't avoid it. Now, I'm not saying go out and look for an argument, start picking arguments with people. That would be weird. But what I'm saying is, if there's a conflict, if there's something that's occurring in a friendship or a relationship of yours, or maybe in a workplace, and you're having difficulty and you're feeling upset, it's worth it to think about why you're feeling upset. And if there's a simple conversation you might be able to have with the other person to address the issue, think about addressing it. Now, there are times when we're not able to do this, when you might have to kind of sit with those difficult feelings, and that can be tough. But if it's a setting where you can probably have a kind of brief conversation or maybe even disagreement with the person and resolve it, all the better. Otherwise, you're going to be getting frustrated and might be snappy or short with them or not doing your job as well. And the other person's not going to know why. Because, and this is the second tip, we're not mind readers. Now, I'm not commenting on supernatural abilities, but I'm saying your average, everyday human can't read your mind. And it doesn't matter if you've been dating them forever, or if you've been married forever, or if they're your twin. If you're really angry with them, they don't know why. And even if they do know why, they might not know what it is that you'd like them to do to resolve the conflict. So remember, number 1 is accept it. We all do it. We all argue. Number 2 is we can't read each other's minds. And sometimes this is interesting because I'll talk with couples or friends of mine and they'll say, oh, I'm so pissed off when he does this. He should know that. Or she should know that. Or isn't it obvious? A lot of times the biggest answer is, most common answer is no, it's not obvious. Just like common sense isn't actually all that common. You might notice you don't stumble into common sense everywhere you go. Similarly, things we think people should know or should be able to read our minds about aren't that simple. And yes, it's frustrating having to say to someone something that we feel is obvious. But if it's not obvious to them, is it more frustrating to share that information with them? Or to be having an argument when they don't know what you're arguing about? And now, here's the third tip. Make sure that if you're in an argument, you're only having one argument. Oftentimes, people are in fact having 2 separate arguments in parallel with each other. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you might say, we're arguing about money. My parents coming to visit, and we're going to spend money on a nice meal out for them. Okay. So you may feel frustrated that your partner is arguing about taking your parent out for dinner. But on the other hand, your partner may believe that you're having an argument about the amount of attention or care or energy that is spent on them versus your parent. For example, maybe you haven't gone out to dinner with your partner in a long time, or taken them on a date, or gotten them a gift, or maybe there's some repair in the house that they'd like done that hasn't gotten done because you were focused on other things, or life kind of caught up with you. Those are all reasons, valid reasons. But the trick is to recognize then when some frustrations in one other area might occur in an argument that seems like it's about a different topic. So no, they probably don't necessarily care to whether or not to bring your parents out to dinner. Maybe they'd say, fine, let's do that. But can we also do something for us? Similarly, I've worked with people where, they were having an argument over food going spoiled in the fridge. Now, no one was starving, but one of them felt that it was a sign that their kids weren't getting enough food. Here's the truth. First of all, some of these details are changed to protect confidentiality, don't worry. Just some broad, mixed examples. So, one person saw, a rotting leftovers in the fridge and said to the other, our kids are starving, this is unacceptable. Well, here's the situation. One person had grown up with food scarcity in their home, where any food going bad was a terrible waste of food, while the other person hadn't grown up with that same experience. So while it seemed like, on the surface, it was an argument over food going bad in the kitchen, one person's responsibility in the domestic area versus the others, the truth is, one person was having an argument that was tied to very traumatic experiences growing up, of not having enough food, while the other person felt that this was an argument about gender roles, about their division of labor as two partners, and who was responsible for what. So you can see now that, in fact, it's really important to figure out, are you having the same conversation or two separate conversations that might be at odds with each other? So we have accept that you're going to argue. Recognize that there may be times when it's better to resolve something because we can't read minds. And 3, make sure that you're having the same argument. So really, a big part of arguing, I gotta stop rubbing my nose, but it's allergy season here in Florida, and the allergies are really getting me down, let me tell you. So if my eyes look red or, I sneeze in the middle of the Facebook Live, that would be terrible. I won't sneeze on the camera though, I promise. So, again, make sure you're having the same conversation. And listen more than you speak. Now, why do I say this? Well, like I've said in other conversations, it's easy for our words to get ahead of our thoughts, and for us to feel like someone else is hearing us as soon as we say something. Now the itchy eyes are acting up. But the truth is this. Especially when we're feeling emotionally aroused, so excited, not necessarily positively, negatively. So angry, upset, frustrated, anxious, worried, sad. If we're talking to someone else, if you're arguing, especially with someone you care about, then it's going to be harder for you to hear things. Hey, glad to see you're watching. Thanks for the comment. Feel free to comment, like, and share if you'd like to share this with your friends, enjoying it, for whether you're watching it now or later. Good to have you. Additionally, because it's harder for us to hear things and to understand things when people are talking to us, it's important to give them time to process what we're saying. So for instance, if you're towards the end of a conversation and you've said something positive or maybe accepting of what the other person has been arguing the whole time, if they immediately snap back with some criticism or continue the argument, think about repeating what you said slower and calmer, because their mind is still in that kind of fight or flight response that we sometimes get into in an argument, where they may just be assuming that everything you're saying right now is critical of them. And that's another key thing about arguments. Criticism isn't helpful. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, saying, "Oh, you're so bad at washing the dishes," doesn't help anyone. Now, if you want to have a discussion about how to wash the dishes, or, I'd really appreciate it if we could find a way to take turns washing the dishes more often, that could be a helpful discussion, or even an argument if it's a difficult topic. But if you start off by criticizing, you're just going to set the other person back on the defensive. And once one person's on the defensive and one's on the offensive, it's pretty hard to ever come to a nice, calm conclusion. So, additionally, if you're watching right now, have any questions or other topics you'd like to suggest for a future Facebook Live or even right now, feel free to post them in the comments. Don't see any comments right now. See, we got one like. That's great. Using this new program right now called Ecamm Live. This is not an ad, just explaining that I can't quite see all the comments or things right now, so we'll be learning it bit by bit together. Additionally, you might notice this weird creature encroaching on me. Well, that's the microphone and the pop filter. That's because, especially when you're watching these videos, I want to make sure that you're getting the best quality you can, because whether we're in teletherapy online or you're in my Winter Park, Florida office, I want to be able to share what I have to share with you and not let anything get in the way of that. Additionally, in these Facebook Lives, I'm trying to share some of the thoughts and ideas that I share with my clients in sessions and online and in office. So, if there's ever questions you have of a non-confidential nature, feel free to message me on Facebook, and maybe I'll do a topic on them on Facebook sometime. So, another thing I was thinking about the other day, now that we've covered arguing, is arguments and discussions in a relationship are kind of like copywriting. Now, why do I say this? Well, I recently launched my new redesigned website, drbraman.com. That's doctor spelled out and Braman, B-R-A-M-A-N. And part of that experience is writing copy. Now, copy is the, jargony term for text, words. It's whatever the words you see on a website, that's called copy. And that's because someone has put a lot of effort into coming up with those words, choosing those words, and part of it is thinking really hard about the experience you want the person reading those words to have when they're on your website. Similarly, when you're in an argument or a discussion with someone, it's important to recognize that the purpose of arguing is to communicate. Sometimes there are things that we might communicate non-verbally with a sigh. It might be kind of a sense of frustration or a sense of resignation, like, we're having this argument again, or you still haven't understood what I'm talking about. But the other part of an argument is communicating using the words you're choosing. And so just in copywriting, where someone sits down and thinks very clearly about what words they're going to use, what they want to communicate, and how that's going to be understood by the other person, so too in an argument, is it worth it to think carefully about your words? Again, listen more than you speak. Part of that is it gives you the chance to really listen to what are the words the other person is saying. What are they telling you verbally, and what are they telling you non-verbally? And in addition, it lets you think more about what words you're going to use. So if you keep saying the same thing over and over again, and it just doesn't seem to be getting through to the person, listen to what they're telling you. What they're telling you is they don't understand it with the words you've been using. So it might be worth it to talk to a friend, family member, or therapist and say, so I found myself having this discussion with someone, and I keep saying this. What do you think I mean when I say that? Or you can just say that to the person you're arguing with and say, I've been trying to tell you this. It feels like you're not hearing me. That it's going in one ear and out the other, or it's going in one ear and bouncing right back out. And that's the trouble, is you might be talking, the sound waves are hitting their eardrum, but nothing else is. And so it's important to realize not just the words you say, but how they're heard by other people. So the other day, for example, I was sitting in a coffee shop reading a book, and there was someone on a date in the coffee shop. They're speaking quite loudly. Me and a few of the other patrons were clearly a little frustrated, I'll be honest, that this conversation of this person on this, seemed like it was a good date, was so loud that other people weren't able to enjoy the coffee shop ambiance as much. Now, I sat there, and at first, I thought about biting my tongue, but I found myself getting frustrated. And on the one hand, I was frustrated with that person, but I also found myself frustrated because me and all those other people were sitting there waiting for him to read our minds. And like I said earlier, people can't read our minds. If you're frustrated, they don't necessarily know that you're frustrated, and they might know that you're frustrated even if they can see your face, but they might not know why you're frustrated or what they could do about it. So I decided to do a little bit of copywriting of my own. Again, copy like for a website or a magazine or an ad. It's what you write to get across the message you'd like to convey. And usually it's guiding someone towards an action. Not always, but often. So, for instance, on my website, my copy is to help you understand how I work with people, who I work with, where I work, and to suggest if you'd like, you can call me for a free consult or call to schedule an appointment. So, in this coffee shop, I'm sitting there, and I want to write a little note to this person, guiding them towards the action of talking softer. So this person was talking very loud. I almost demonstrated, but I don't want to blow out your ears. I hate when videos drastically change volume on me. So, sitting in a coffee shop, I want him to talk softer. But I'm also aware he's on a date. If I just walk up and go, "Hey buddy, being a bit loud here, can you quiet it down a bit for the rest of us? Trying to focus," probably wouldn't get the result I wanted. Might feel briefly fun, but not really, because I'm not a huge fan of conflict. Might get a few claps from other patrons. Yeah, but not if he, didn't listen. So what I did was I wrote a note. I said, "Hey, sounds like you're having a very lively conversation. Just wanted to let you know, having some trouble focusing on the book I'm reading right now. Would really appreciate it if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit softer. Thanks a lot. Hope you have a great day." Now, I'll be honest. It took me a while to write that note in such a calm and somewhat positive tone of voice. In fact, the friend I was with suggested maybe it was too positive. But after, getting up the nerve, preparing myself to walk over to the table, I walked over, handed him the note, a little sticky note like this, and said, "Have a good day." He clearly was a little confused, read the note, and then was speaking softer. Now, here's what happened. I felt a certain way. I didn't count on him to read my mind. I acknowledged that sometimes, especially in public places where there's a lot of people, or in a house with other people or friends or flatmates or roommates, you're going to have conflict sometimes. People like to enjoy spaces in different ways. Some people like to talk really loud when they're out in public. Some people in coffee shops want quiet, and some people want somewhere in between. So, don't assume they can read your mind. Think about the words you want to say before you say them, and think about how they might be reacted to. So, if you go to, a stall at the farmer's market, or even maybe a sample table in a grocery store, and someone's giving out bites of cheese, probably don't say to them, "Ugh, cheese, so disgusting." They're not going to take it so well. Or they might just ignore you because, frankly, they're not the person you should be speaking to in that case. Tell whoever you're shopping with, "I don't really like cheese. Let's not buy any of that." Similarly, if you go and tell someone that how they make their living or the meal they just cooked for you isn't to your liking, think carefully about how you phrase that. So, for example, if someone's cooked you a meal and you're not really enjoying it so much, think about sharing with them positive comments about the meal. So, "I really appreciate that you cooked this meal. It's nice to come back from work or, come visit you at your place or at this restaurant, I guess if it's a chef. These examples are getting a little muddled. I apologize. And then later, if you're talking about the meal, you can say, I wonder what that meal might be like with a little bit less salt or with this instead of that. So it's kind of providing some constructive feedback and focusing more on the change you'd like to see rather than what you'd like to stop. Similarly, when we're talking to spouses, partners, people we're dating, close friends, it helps to focus on the positive aspects of things. So, really appreciate that you thought of me the other day. You brought home such and such, maybe flowers. But you know what? I'm really allergic to flowers and pollen. So I appreciate the thought, but in the future, if you could not bring flowers, that would be great. That's just one example. So, again, I'm Dr. Daniel Brayman, licensed clinical psychologist. I hope you found this helpful today. And I look forward to seeing you next week for another Facebook Live. Might be Tuesday at noon, still deciding that timing. If you'd like to post in the comments with times that might be more convenient for you, I, would like to set this up so that as many people as want to can join me live. I know Tuesday at noon is kind of the time I started with, but it's not always the best time for everyone. So again, Dr. Daniel Brayman. Feel free to check me out at facebook.com/Dr. Brayman, Dr. Brayman, or at Dr. Brayman, spelled out, .com. Again, that's drbrayman.com. That site is in English and Spanish, just like the therapy I provide. Thank you very much, and have a great day.